All right, so hello, Sami, and everyone, welcome to this session about tailoring ethical learning technologies. Today we have researchers from Helsinki University, Jyväskylä University, and Tallinn University. And we start by presenting briefly ourselves. So my name is Jana Pejoska. I work for Helsinki University, and I'm a researcher in coming from design research background, and at the moment I'm studying scalable learning technologies, and I'm really interested in understanding the ways we can use data transparency to improve experience for the learners. And yeah, I'm doing my PhD at the moment at Aalto University, but I'm looking forward to a good discussion today on these topics that are very interesting for all of us in this circle. So if Tanja can go next and present herself briefly.
Okay, hello, Tanja Välisalo, a researcher and lecturer from the University of Jyväskylä with a game studies background, actually.
Great. Then maybe we can hear from Minna Väsarainen.
Yeah, I'm a PhD student from University of Helsinki, and my background is in educational sciences. And now I moved on to working life studies.
Great. And how about Juri?
Hello, I'm a PhD student in Tallinn University and researcher at the same university, and I have legal and economical background and background in education of adults. And my topic is research on how to learn effectively thinking critically, critical thinking for everyone, I would say, and what prevents to do that.
Great. Thanks, Juri. And then we have finally Merja Bauters.
Hello, I'm Merja Bauters, also from Tallinn University, professor of digital transformation. And my background is, guess what, Helsinki University and aesthetics, so philosophy of art, from where I have moved to technology enhanced learning and teaching engineers, and from there to Tallinn University. So a little bit varied background. Thank you, Jana.
Great. So I will turn off now my screen sharing so that we can all see each other better. And I just want to make like a quick introduction to this session today. So we are here to discuss and expand all of our understanding about learning technology context and the ways in which the learners relate to their data and how they would like to use it. And as you already heard, we're coming from an academic context, and together we'd like to unpack the ways in which learning happens in online communities. And in this way, by observing characteristics in these communities, like for instance in games, we can think together about what would be the needs for moderating, or how to learn how to perform better through this data, or understand the relations the users form for rewards, etc. And how we're going to go forward is that we have our researchers who will present briefly a topic and their views, and also then pose some questions. And after that, we invite you, the audience, to participate in sort of a panel discussion, which will be in a format of Fishbowl. And the ones who don't know yet what is a Fishbowl format, it is a form of a dialogue, a system for interacting in large group. And how it works typically is there are 4 chairs in the center occupied by people. They are arranged in an inner circle, and this is what we call the fishbowl. And the rest of the people or the audience are outside of their circles, and they are listening to a discussion which is happening in the fishbowl. And how we know now in this Zoom setup who is in the Fishbowl and who is not, is that the ones who are in the Fishbowl discussion will have their camera on all the time, and the rest of the audience who is listening will have the camera off. But at any time, anybody from the audience is invited to jump into this conversation and continue the discussion on the question at the moment. And this is key. This is the key to this flow and this discussion. So please, at the moment, Sami, and hopefully later we have more listeners, jump in and talk with us there. Another thing to remember is that at all points we have to have 4 people in the Fishbowl discussion, and when one new person enters, one of the 4 existing people in the Fishbowl discussion must voluntarily leave and kind of like leave space for that discussion. So whenever you hear an interesting question, just feel free to join and by turning the camera on. And also we need to remember that whoever is not in the Fishbowl discussion should have their mic muted and their camera off. Yeah, and another good thing to remember in this whole session is that we can use the chat to talk about anything that comes to mind that is not maybe so directly connected to the actual Fishbowl discussion, but maybe like a side comment. And we also have one document that we'd like to use just for brainstorming or exchanging thoughts. And the link to that document you can find in the chat. It's a Google Doc. In this session, we also have a room assistant, John, that can help us in case we have any technical difficulties or any other issues. So yeah, I think that's about it from me. And next, I would like to invite Tanja, who will have about 5 minutes to discuss some examples about what we can learn from communities online, such as games. So please, Tanja, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We'll actually have one game as an example here. Why games in general? I think it's good to say a few words about that. So as you probably know, game industry is the biggest entertainment industry at the moment. So it's even bigger than film industry, which has traditionally earlier been the one with the big money going on there. And this means, of course, that games have a huge impact on how people expect different kinds of services and digital platforms to work, what kind of expectations they have on the user experience, and what kind of user practices they have related to these different services and platforms. So that is why it's a good starting point when thinking about learning technologies and learning platforms as well. Online game communities also have can be very big, have their own economies, own cultures that also function sort of like more traditional communities, more traditional societies. So that's also why it's beneficial to look at them when thinking about using data and data experience for the users. And my example here is from Overwatch. I'm not sure if it's familiar to you, so I'll just briefly explain. It's a digital game that is played from the first person perspective, as in this image you can see the one possible player perspective to the game, and it's played in teams of 6 versus 6 players online. Either with an existing team or just a team randomly assigned to you when you play. And it's a shooter game where you aim to defeat the opposing team. And this has been actually my main research site for the last couple of years. So at this point, I'm quite familiar with it, but still there's a lot to explore. And in Overwatch, as in most competitive digital games, user experience with data and what kind of data is collected and how it's used and how it's shown to the player, it's very much focused on comparing your performance to the performance of others. So it's very much focused on the competition. And the game actually offers loads of statistics to the player. So here's just one example, but it's a digital game that where you can, as in many other games, you can look at your statistics on different game modes, more casual or more competitive. You can look at your data on different competitive seasons, see how you have progressed. You can look at your data, like in this example, based on a particular character you have played, and how much you have played, how many games you have won, what you have done in the game, and so forth. But despite all this data, even though it's hugely interesting, there is one that's specifically important for players, and that is, of course, their ranking. So when you play competitively, you are interested in how you rank. So here, for example, is a ranking shown as a number, 1113. This reveals to you, if you know or what this reveals to you, I'm not a very good player because I don't have the reflexes of a 12-year-old anymore. But this shows the most important number, so skill rating. And the interesting thing about skill rating, it's a number between 1 and 5,000, is that it is not at all clear to the, or transparent to the player how this ranking is formed, how statistics, for example, relate to this ranking. Of course, there are different kinds of theories and thoughts about this. And of course, we know that when your team loses, your ranking falls. When your team wins, your ranking rises. So, but that's about it. Nothing else is certain. And what this leads to is the players coming up with these loads of theories on how you can rise up the ladder. So rise from the bronze level to the silver and gold and so forth, all the way perhaps to the top, the more like professional side of things. And this even leads to players using different kinds of tools for this, which I think Minna will talk about more in a minute. But it can also lead to experiences of unfairness. So even though this is a very common practice in games, it can still lead to players feeling that even though their skills have developed, their ranking doesn't rise. So they believe it's unfair. They can believe it's unfair, and there's loads of discussions about this in the game community, how it is unfair that they cannot rise even though their skills have gone up. And players even end up buying new accounts. So some have multiple accounts and they always buy a new one and start fresh to build up to the rank that they believe they should be in. So I'm not judging here. I'm sort of posing the question that would offering more data and more detailed data result in a better experience for the players. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanja, for a very interesting and provocative presentation about what we can see through games. And in the same spirit, I would like to continue forward and invite Minna Väsarainen to discuss further these topics. So I will just put Minna now in the center. Yep. And the floor is yours.
I believe you can see the slides now, right?
Yeah.
So I will continue on Tanja's topic, but briefly bring the focus on the game developers rather than gamers, and then return back to players themselves. So here you can see a quote from a game developer. The important part is that we can observe players, how they interact with our game. This is something we constantly keep attached on. I keep attached on. How do they perceive it? What are they saying? And what are they actually doing in our game? So while games like Overwatch are showing a great great amount of data to players themselves. The real access is within the game developers. They can see it all. There are huge amounts of data collected, and it's all kinds of games, whether you're playing mobile game from your phone or whatever. Basically, all digital games provide amazing amounts of data, and it is actively used to make games better. And what does it mean when game is made better? It's about making it a better product that sells more, also making it more engaging experience. So it's not about solely business logic. It's usually about passion that game developers want to do. But this, I think, game evidently divides gamers and game developers in that sense that it's uneven access to the data, and game is something that developers focus all their time and it's their job. So it's a dividing element in that sense. Even though developers usually are gamers themselves, they are just a small part of it. And this is parallel to businesses and platforms such as Facebook or MySpace or Google. I just want to point that games are our one example in this. So yes, I think I covered this already, that games are as platforms and providing the data. And this is another example of what kind of data they provide immediately after the game. So this is from Overwatch as well. So you can see how many eliminations and how did you perform. However, this does not show how you performed compared to others, only in a very general level. Like if you have gold, you had the best objective kills. But how to provide more data to the players, like Tanja mentioned, there are new or different kinds of different applications. And this is not coming from the developers themselves. This is something that people usually do voluntarily. And Overzoom and Overbuff are just applications and essentially internet sites providing more detailed access to the gaming data. And these are kind of supporting the theories that gamers develop themselves. And these are supportive elements of the game communities around the game. But this is something that comes from the players themselves. And we just wonder if this enables new kinds of ownership of their data they are providing. Playing a game, you provide data. And it would be interesting to hear if there would be any other examples, maybe outside of gaming community, because Overwatch and Overzoom and Buff are just, it's one game and it's in a gaming community. But for instance, when it comes to governance of cities, would there be some applications to make it more approachable to the citizens, that they can actually look out their data? So yes, I think that was my 5 minutes. And here are some questions, but I believe Jana has more. So maybe I should stop sharing the screen.
I would ask you to leave the screen on. I see we have much more participants now. So for the ones who came a little bit late, we have heard several talks or 2 talks from Minna and Tanja, using games as an example where we can learn from about how data is used and how it can create different kind of experiences for the players. And after these talks, we would like to invite you, the audience, to participate in sort of like a panel discussion, but it's basically in the format of a fishbowl. So what we will do next is that we will have 4 people in the center of a fishbowl. These would be people who have their cameras on, 4 of us. and then the rest can actively listen just with their cameras off. And then when anybody has something to add or comment or ask question, they can just come into freely to the fishbowl where we are where we rest are having this discussion. And in that point, some of us who are in the fishbowl discussion will just turn the camera off and allow space for the new person to speak. So let's take these first questions that Minna has as a starting point, and think about what could be other examples that are similar to using these kind of data and analytics to change some kind of experiences. Does anybody, can we think of other examples in our professional lives maybe, or other way that can be used to use the data to improve some processes and experiences? And let's see now how we will do this. Maybe Minna can stop the screen sharing. So then we can have a view, which is like a gallery. Okay, so we are here, Minna, Jana, Juri, and Tanja in a fishbowl at the moment.
I can just, at this point, if we are starting the discussion, say that interesting about this, these applications are that they are just for leisure. You're not really gaining anything from it. You're just doing it out of pleasure. So, but people are still genuinely interested and willing to spend so much time in it. So.
And as a gamer yourself, Minna, I was wondering, do you feel that you have similar experiences when it comes to observing that data and your maybe skill development or understanding your ranking as others? Do you think that data is the same for everyone, like observing your own progresses and performances?
Not really, no. I think it's very social phenomena, because when I was using these apps actively, I had a small gaming community, like online friends, which part of them I know in real life. And it was the social interest that drove me into it. I don't actually like competitive games that much. It was the social aspect of it. Did Tanja have some comments on this?
Yes, I was actually just thinking that from the learning platform perspective, we also know that it is very important for people to understand if there are some gamified elements where you can see your progress or see how you are doing, even see how you are doing in comparison to others. That's also a completely different question. Should you have something like that on a learning platform at all? Something that sort of hints at competitiveness. But we know that when you do have these kinds of elements, it is very important for users to know how to have it very clear how it is developed, like how come I have this kind of avatar, for example. If you can build your avatar in connection to how you advance on an online course, for example, it is very important for users to know like what they have to do to get their avatar to the next stage. So how these two are connected, what are the causal relations between the kind of a gamified trophy or reward to what they are doing. So I think these examples that Minna presented with Oversumo and Overbuff also show that people have sort of a yearning for this information to understand how the system works. So I would actually pose the question that is it that these sort of third-party tools, are they a positive thing? Are they, you know, a hint of how users are very active and how players are active and committed? Or is it a sign of the developers not catering enough, not supporting their community enough? Or is it both? What do you think, Minna or Jana?
That's a very good question, and it also leads me to think to even more questions, like, for instance, the differences between games and what could be an online learning platform that, for example, for taking a course, would be maybe how we understand competitiveness. At least what is instantly coming to my mind is that in online courses, that competitiveness is more with yourself rather than in relation to others, like thinking about scoring and just performers, and what we can get from this outside data, third-party data providers can have many differences in this sense.
I was, as a like, to continue discussion with the Tanya's question, about the third-party applications. Essentially, I would see it's coming from people. However, Overwatch is a very, very big game, and so is the side industries, I believe. But there are smaller games and smaller game communities where the community itself is so small, including the developers, that it's in the hands of the people, so to say. For instance, the dance game Stepmania, there is a huge amount of songs which are provided to the game by the gamers themselves. And while it might not be lawful in that sense, there are copyrights and the way how you like share the data. I'm not sure if it would go into GDPR, which probably Juri will mention something about next, but it's something people genuinely enjoy and the intentions are good. But I don't know how to spark this kind of thing. For instance, if there is an online learning course, and if we would provide this data and to make it more engaging and competitive to the participants, would it be the same? Or should we have such a good online course that people would start to think around it? Would it be so if we would make it the online course itself more game-like, that it would spark this kind of development around it? However, it's a quite difficult question. I'm not sure if that would be even possible to do intentionally.
Yeah, I think like gamifying learning in general is like a huge area of discussion and debate in itself. But just even looking at this experience with the transparency of your own data and how it functions with your performance data or ranking or whatever it is, depending on the context. I think that there is definitely a big question about do we need to have these in the systems themselves, or if the service provider, like a digital learning platform developer, has all these things included, does it take away from the users? Does it take away their own sort of active stance? I think there's some comments on the chat.
Yes, very interesting sites. Thank you, Mikko.
Would you, Mikko, be willing to turn on the camera and join the discussion? Maybe we can open up these topics.
Thank you. I'm sorry I came a little bit late, so I missed part of your presentations because of the family hassle here in the morning. But basically, trying to catch up and please say if I'm on the right track. But yes, we have kind of thought the huge potential for gamification in the let's say raising awareness on information disorders on quite a long term. I proposed it at the time for our game industry in Finland, but nobody saw the business logic there. Then the Dutch made this game, and I think it has a huge potential. And now they have a new version that is a more collective of the get bad news. Then later our Yle did a troll factory that is practically a kind of a bit of a copycat of the Dutch model, but main thing that things happen, but there is a like really how to trigger people's interest and awareness on the problems of the information overflow in the social media, and do it with, let's say, in some sort of engaging ways. And these are the two references that we have used this far. And actually we have some plans with some University of Helsinki researchers to develop this kind of a digital information literacy. And so if people are interested, I already proposed, was it in the yesterday there was a data literacy workgroup that we could try to liaise there was a new data literacy, I suppose, a Slack group or something like that. But yeah, I mean, you obviously know much more about the gaming and all that type of potential. So that's what I wanted to share you the links, and if you are aware of those ones, do you find them interesting? The Get Bad News is a game, and now there is a collective version of it. We are actually testing with it within the Faktabari, and but of course, then the Social Dilemma is more like awareness raising, the documentary with a big resource pool linked to that one. But if this resonates and helps the discussions, feel free.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I didn't know this beforehand. Just a quick look, and they look really interesting. And essentially, gamification of learning can be quite easy. It can be text-based, choosing options. So there are a lot of potential, and still, like Tanja said, it's a highly debated topic, and how to make learning, like actually how to actually gamificate learning. It's not that easy in practice. And go ahead.
And it's also
the idea now that I kind of still being, let's say, more like a middle-aged, but so not the generation that really is into that one, but we kind of with teachers kind of criticize a little bit to Get Bad News, that you propose, you kind of say that, you know, this how the trolls work, this how they try to, let's say, destroy the public space, and you can do you learn that one. But now the next step that we are actually testing this evening with some colleagues is some sort of that the teacher basically, yes, do that, but let's then have let's say the discussions on the topic. So is this, let's say, the right thing to do, and what did you just do, and how does the social media logics kind of polarize that type of thing? So you are playing with a very dangerous, let's say, algorithmic games as such, but it is something that yeah, if there are people who are really into the what works and doesn't, because in our group practically we are more like, you know, teacher type of approach, that, you know, this might be interesting for the youngsters, but you know, it's a bit of a patronizing approach as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikko. This was really interesting.
Yeah, thanks.
I actually right away saved the links for my game study students to look at as well. So happy to exchange these ideas. Hello, Tatiana.
Hello, everyone. I'm currently in Canada, and it is 12:30 almost. But a really interesting discussion. I'm not a gamer, but I am thinking about gamification as such an amazing opportunity to teach people about data, because I worked on, for example, I'm coming from data visualization specifically, and something that the COVID-19 pandemic illuminated for many is how much people don't even understand how to interact with data. When they see data visualizations that are seemingly simple, but come through and are misinterpreted entirely, or they're like, people are unable to critically think about what they're seeing, to dig deeper. And so I imagine like how could we design a game to teach people how to think in a data conscious way?
That's actually highly interesting point, because when in retrospective, why I'm doing what I'm doing now as my job, being a researcher, it's solely because I've played games. And did Tanja have some comment on this?
Yeah, I was actually thinking that there's this huge discussion and debate been going on about gamification and gamified learning, and there are of course those who think that it's a hype and that it's even detrimental or that it's just a marketing ploy. But I think this is one of the examples, and those as well that Mikko posed, that there are so many levels and different kinds of ways to do gamification or use gameful design in learning, or what is called persuasive games as well, games that are meant to affect your thinking or attitudes. So then we go further from the level of leaderboards or top 10 or those kinds of superficial awards or pontification towards how to use these kinds of mechanics to really force people to think. And I think this also relates to actually what is discussed in the chat, like Sami mentioned about the different kinds of psychological motivations or rewards for playing games. I think this could be an inspiration here. I believe the current consensus is that we can look at and think like there's 5 categories, that there are those who do like to compete. So there's the competition aspect. But there's also other motivations. There's achievement. There's socializing. There's exploring, and there's also this immersion to fantasy or immersion to aesthetics. So different kinds of motives that can also, of course, exist simultaneously. And if we take all of this in when we think about the possibilities, I think they become a lot wider in a sense. And this I think this is such a great angle for this discussion to take now. I'm so happy. Something we did not think about, but like already I have my brain buzzing with this.
If I may, I hope I'm not interrupting. Sometimes I have a lag here. Okay. I worked in the Teaching and Learning Institute at a university here, particularly with experiential learning and drawing from experiential learning theory, which is Kolb. It's quite well known. And basically it's one learns by having an experience and then reflecting on it. So the reflection is that's where the learning happens, is during the reflective piece. And then I'm thinking about gaming and having games within that space whereby the game is the experience. But then can you actually have a reflection or reflective aspect in the game whereby learning can actually take place in a much more meaningful way? Another relationship I'm drawing here is from my data visualization studies and research is I'm interested in physicalization versus like a 2-dimensional visual space. And when you, like, for example, I went to a conference and there were 2 researchers that created a game on a tabletop with cards and set up a space where they wanted to show students how to navigate university. That's the first year. And it was really effective. And imagining like transposing that game to a 2D space and something might get lost. So I wonder if the underlying assumption here with people being quite like wary of gamification is that they see a disconnect between the physicality and materiality of a game and the experience and how it might translate poorly to like a 2-dimensional environment.
I think that's a very good point. And also as far as I know, based on research on educational games in general, that's like exactly that the reflection is where the learning happens, that the reflection in the, usually it's in the school context, it's the reflection in the classroom. But that's such a good point, like how we could actually include it in the game or game-like environment or experience in itself. Yeah, definitely like food for thought.
Let me answer this question. Just share my experience. I design critical thinking games or games for learning critical thinking. So, and reflection is the most important part of that. So first, the game, people play and answering questions, multiple choice questions, whether they're right or wrong. And then there is a reflection, and reflection actually mentioned by participants like a most valuable thing, when they can discuss why they give such answer or other answers, what logical fallacies were there, and anything. So I believe it's possible to integrate reflection. It depends on the type of game, I would say. And if we put special learning objectives, I think we can design game with reflection. That's it.
I would go back to Tanja's and Minna's examples in the start. Sorry for those who came after that. But Tanja and Minna both had really nice visualizations of numbers of what the gamers have been doing, how they have been achieving. Basically, I would say that there's reflection part in that when you're trying to figure out why it's there, what does it mean, what did I do, what made some of the numbers to be what they are compared to whatever. So you referred to school context, and I have to say that many school context reflections are really not good. They are sort of like pasted on top of what you are trying to learn. So I would say that many of the game features that we are not even thinking, they actually do promote reflection. I'm not saying that everything needs to be gamified, especially because I know that there's quite a lot of students who actually don't want to play any games, or learners in general, for example, in work life. But I think that there's this point of what we can learn from how games are doing things, even though we might not even gamify the whatever it means, if it's a societal learning point, or just learning in school, or learning at work. Now I can jump out of.
That's really good point, Merja. It's a really good point. And if we can continue now from here to hear more thoughts from Juri about legal issues, I think we can pause now this nice discussion that is going on, but we'll come back to it soon. So please be active after this talk, and I'll give the floor now to Juri.
Thank you, Jana. So I'm going to talk about legal issues. Actually, when we are talking about legal, it's not related only to ethical learning technologies or other technologies. Law applies to many things, even if the things are not look alike the same. For instance, my favorite pet, electricity, chocolate bar, all are the things in terms of law and can be bought and sold. So I'm going to talk also about the data and probably the other level of data, what is usually discussed on this conference. I would like to provoke the discussion and actually have some answers, answering some questions what are really important in my opinion, and especially important for our research. I will give you another example of legal things. Like imagine that you are offered a free cleaning services for your home. And because the company which provides these cleaning services proclaim that they are for cleaner world. They want the world would be cleaner. So that's why they provide you free cleaning services and ask you to click terms and conditions, and you click terms and conditions, and after some time you realize that actually you authorized the company to collect information about you, to collect all information from your shopping attitudes to your sexual fantasies. Like probably you know from research that 94% of porn sites they sell the data about their users. So what is it legal? Yes, it is, because you authorize the company. But what makes it possible? How it was possible that you go into this situation? And here we are going to the talking about the data, but the data on the a bit other level, not about my personal data, but the data about me as a human. Knowledge of psychology, which I cannot take out, and I cannot use GDPR to take it from anywhere. So what I'm talking about, I will show you something. I hope you can see this. Fancy cookie. Well, it's a company, one of the sponsors of this conference. You see here, thanks, it's okay, and check and adjust. So this, what is used here, it's so-called isolation effect. Why it's here? Because there is more probability that a normal person like me clicks here at the green button. And actually, the question is how ethical is used to these persuasion technologies, which are widely used in the net. And it's not data about me personally, not my sex, not my education, but me as a person. Is it legal or is it ethical? And talking about law and justice, I would like to mention that laws, it's something that people adapt. It's something invented by people. And actually, in a country, in some countries, democratic countries, I mean, the majority is able theoretically to adapt the laws which are in favor of the best interests of the majority. And the question is what kind of law we would like, not what is legal now, but what we would like to be the law, what we would like to be legal. So I don't think I have much time. So I think I would like to go to my questions. So first, the most interesting, I think, assumption, which is not truth, is that some services are free, like free email, free account in the social network, which is not truth, actually. It's not free. It's something in return of something, my data, for instance, or something else, usually my data, my behavior in the net, which can predict my actions and which can be sold to anyone who wants to sell me something, even, and be sure that I would buy it even if I don't really need it. So using some tricks, like I will show you another one. From Mentimeter, you see, you would like to, when you finish survey on Mentimeter, what is also used on this conference, you can sign up, or you don't like to sign up. Okay, see voting results. And if you see voting results, sorry, it's wrong. If you see voting results, you will enter your email and then you will see voting results. So again, the probability that you will leave your email is higher. The question which I'm going to put in the chat, the question is, should it be prohibited to call services free if they are not actually free? What do you think?
That's a great question and provocation, Juri. Thanks for this really interesting examples. I would like to invite others to turn on their cameras and think together here with us on these topics. But I can start at least to think about what is free and where data is free, and should data cost, should part of the data cost, should all of it belong to the users, and what kind of roundabouts are there to kind of lure us to provide something else that is not seemingly important, like for example our email address, which can be later used for other purposes like advertisement, for example. That is quite interesting topic.
Mika, do you want to say something? Your mic is, yeah.
Yeah, perhaps personally, I think that's super important, because we've been mostly following, of course, the social medias and their data practices and all that. But I have to say that as far as I understand, I believe, but I'm not the expert, the game industry is not very good track record on this one, and makes it pretty complicated. And if they could somehow, let's say, turn it out on or bring awareness, so they are not as such a big threat to democracy level that the social medias, for example, the game industry. But I mean, that's how people, they are masters of hooking people, as probably here people know very well. And I've been very critical sometimes here in Finland as well. We have quite a big game industry, and I might even see some, I mean, I kind of witness it, but some policy consequences on being pretty, you know, laxist on the privacy stuff, because that's how the game industry makes their money, without data, so to say, and using that one. So, but if that could be used, so to say, bring awareness, I see a huge potential, and that would be a very modern approach to raise awareness on what is, let's say, running the internet at the moment. But this is more like a statement than a concrete proposal. But I've been somehow surprised that that's not more discussed. And personally, I'm not such an expert to kind of go with all these type of things. But I mostly want to see it like, let's say, there's a positive chances to show that this is how it works, and so that people are aware. Then it's their call, and then you can pay for your privacy in a way, and pay for your games. But now the free games are, as far as I understand, big challenge on getting a lot of data on the youngsters and hooking them, and then selling the data probably somewhere else as such. But experts, let's say, opinions on this thing is very valued. So if you have studied on this type of things, so please go.
Well, Mika, thank you very much. Still, can I insist to know your opinion as a citizen, as a participant of this society? Do you think that it should be named by their names? But would you vote that it should be prohibited to call services free if they are not really free? What do you think? Or it's okay like it is now?
Of course, nothing is free in the internet, and I mean, I think there is a gradual awareness coming out of that one, but I see such a pragmatism in a way that people, I mean, so give me the optional business model, and that's why as a kind of a propaganda tool, the social dilemma is pretty good one, because it's just like basically insiders. And I know some of these insiders, and they've said that is exactly how it works. And so it's so twisted, the logic at the moment. Now in the game industry, if there could be something like that, the kind of ethical code or awareness, or like, to me, the my data is that you play the free game, or you pay a bit, and then you, let's say, keep your privacy or as such. So that would be the choice to make for the people. But if there is not that option, it's basically harvesting data, and if people are not really aware of that one, as most are probably not, so then it's tricky. That's why we've tried to incorporate, so to say, the data side to our things, because but we are just kind of gradually getting there.
Just a brief comment or addition to what Mikko was saying. A couple of times mentioned youngsters or like children and young people. I think it's also probably quite fair to say that a lot of people our age actually also have lack of knowledge about how these of media literacy, basically, or data literacy, how our data is collected and used. And also actually in relation to games, like the median age of an active digital games player is closing to nearing 40 years old in Finland currently. So we are not safe either.
No. In Finnish policy circles, they always talk about how we have to protect the old people. And I mean, of course we do, of course. But I mean, that's a damn difficult thing to do. With the youngsters and with the skills kids and in the schools, we can still do it. And we have channels, like we have focused our efforts to the teachers, and just, I mean, let them be at least a bit aware what is happening, and they got the tools and they know it much better than us how to get there. And you have to start very soon and early. And I mean, there's international groups coming to Finland to see what we are doing right, and we just like, you have to start from the kindergarten nowadays. I mean, because that's when you are hooked to the machines and all that. And I think that would be super important and the priority, because if we lose, so to say, that generation, those are the future consumers. I'm mostly following the news, let's say, scheme, and of course that's kind of super important, because then you get the manipulated news and all that type of things. But the same logics comes very early in this one. So if this generation or the youngsters lose it, then we can say bye-bye for the any kind of a feasible, sustainable business model, because then people have just sacrificed it. So let's go with that one. So they are already hooked. They already got all the data. So what we need, whereas if you start building awareness, that then there is all the data portabilities and all that type of things. So then let's say aware consumers can just, okay, I go for another one. I mean, at least let's say theoretically. So that's because it's a media literacy is a lot of talk, unfortunately, even in Finland to some extent. I followed it on the European level, and it's a bit sad that there is no scalable solutions. That's why some of the links that I think is the most promising ones, because outside that it's just that yes, we are worried and all that, but very small projects and nothing scalable and nothing to the core of the things as such. So yeah.
Yeah, so what I actually hear you saying is that data literacy and perhaps these discussions we are now having, like the question Juri is posing, we should be posing and discussing in teacher education and kindergarten teacher education, because that's like even taking a step further back from the schools and kindergartens. So yeah.
Our plan is to kind of work towards a kind of we talk about it as a digital information literacy, because I think the information data is of course the part of it, but that's somewhere behind, and that's not very visible, and that's what's running, and you know that, but still the surface level problems are the ones that people, oh, fake news, whoa. But I mean, we can say that we have a pretty fake, let's say, information system, and that comes with the data. And but yeah, what we try to do it is to, so if we should one audience to target, I think this would be the teachers and the teacher students, why not in the universities? And that's why we try to get something going with the University of Helsinki, let's say some researchers, just to build awareness. Of course, the problem is that we don't really know what is happening in internet. On the social media, because they don't give us the data, but or we would talk about the game industry, so there might be more potential. I mean, Finland has some very successful companies who have, let's say, gained with that one. It's a little bit like a taboo, of course, to like, but yeah, they are paying a lot of taxes, let's put it that way, and then they are contributing to the society, but the way they are making their money could be a bit questioned on ethical grounds, to my understanding.
Let me make a short note about what was said here. Like, I'd like to comment exactly one phrase that, okay, I don't like it when the people are aware about what's going on the platform. I don't like it. I will go to another one. So unfortunately now there is no another one Facebook or Instagram in any event. It belongs to the same company. So I mean, it's really good idea to educate about damaging of smoking. But at the same time, people should be, in my opinion, provided with the information right now, not when we rise new generation will fully understand what's going on and their rights. I'd like to raise a pure legal issue, what we would like to be lawful in our world or would not. I believe that it's not really ethical to call something free, which is not really free. So that was my point. Trying to keep my low agenda, I would like to ask another question, more general maybe, about these cookies and everything. And actually, anyone who was interested in dark patterns, they will know a lot of them. So there are persuasion technologies which are used for giving our consent easily or sell us something. And they are not prohibited for now. But the question is, should they be? Should it be prohibited to use what I showed you about cookies or about anything else, which is widely used? And when I talk with people from industry, they say that, okay, but everyone uses it. How can we not use them? The same what was said in 19th century, how we cannot use the child labor. We will not be competitive in this case. We have to use it. So should it be prohibited or it's okay? Because it's kind of gray zone, you know, it's not like something strictly illegal or criminal. No, but it's not giving the whole information. Something using some tricks, trying to reach a person when they are tired or something. So should it be prohibited or should not be prohibited?
I can have a short comment here. My personal opinion is that we should have much stronger data policies that regulate a lot of these gray areas, because I think prohibiting is a very strong word. I think that we have to think of the nuances and think how to give also guidelines rather than just limitations. Maybe for companies and also individuals to be aware of. And one place where we can learn about these things is actually here in this conference. I have checked out that there are some specific talks about data policy making and data literacy going on. So this is just my brief comment, and unfortunately now I have to stop temporarily this discussion so that we can hear maybe more in this same kind of direction, thinking about the future. And I would like to invite Merja so that she can present her thoughts a little bit about how we can feel empowerment through transparency of this data, which I think is quite related. So please, Merja, share some of your thoughts, and let's jump again to this kind of discussions like we had so far.
Thank you, Jana. I will share the screen just for you to at least see something else than my face only. And I will start from where you ended up, because within this data discussion, transparency discussion, gamification discussion, what is right and what is wrong, we often mix quite well different levels where we talked about. So are we talking about different ethical theories? Are we talking about explicit morality, things that are in certain culture or group? Are we talking about moral intuition? And I think we are often talking in the level of moral intuition and calling it ethics. So for example, the discussion that just went before, there was a lot of is persuasion okay? So we could watch it from or discuss it from the point of view of means to an end type of ethics. So if the persuasion is somehow ending up in common good, is it then okay? If it's not, then it's not okay. Or is it an utilitarian point of view that since it has been done so and it works so, so basically we should choose in that way because we get good and then a little bit bad and so forth. And what is good and bad for others? And I think with all this discussion that I have heard, unfortunately also in this conference, people don't really make a difference where in the levels they are doing the discussion. And I think that some of our problems would be clarified if we see where we are discussing. And I'm not saying that I know, I'm just going through into this topic also. So, or let's say that for our research group, this is what we are aiming at to sort of figure out how we should come aware, that was also mentioned here. And one of these awareness things are these kind of different canvases that are made that we can figure out how we are using data, if we are designing something for learning or for others. And sometimes there are other kind of, but I like this picture, so I will leave that one. Because I also try now to sort of collect what all the other talks were about. So I will go back to the start where Minna and Tanja started with the game. So game features and how these reflect sort of the society. Both of them mentioned it in their talk. And I very much agree, because what we can see there, it reflects many points that we are facing in the society. So now, for example, in Estonia, they have a CRAT strategy, which means that they have an artificial intelligence strategy for seamless social services. And that means that there's a lot of algorithms from all the data that is collected, and the services provide you suggestions and recommendations what you should do in your life. The point seems very good. And I would say, for example, I like the Finnish tax system very much because it does that. But on the other hand, I can verify what they are doing. So I know how the taxes are done. And if I don't know something, there's a clear explanation how some things come. Not everything in the society with the algorithms operates in this way. And this is also something that has been mentioned in other talks within this session and other My Data sessions, which is transparency. So in learning, in gaming, Minna and Tanja brought up that we have the numbers, but we don't have any transparency what happens behind the numbers, and people are trying to sort of figure that out. Yes, it provides reflection, but maybe we should have other means to sort of show it out. And I have two sources here. The last one is from 2020, and they did quite a nice study on how to make this transparency happen. And of course, it doesn't happen in a way that we open up everything, because for most of us, that doesn't make any sense. We are not getting anything out of it. Then we come to Tatjana's visual data visualization. So something needs to be visualized or otherwise made perceivable of what the algorithms are doing. And this is basically where my interest in this whole topic comes. So how can we make the transparency so that it's understandable, we can reflect on it, we can become aware, we can make our decisions, what we want to do or not to do, and understand what is going there behind. And that I would think that would give that kind of ownership that Minna was also referring in the start, to get the ownership of the game, to get the ownership of the society and be active when you actually know what happens behind. So my question is, have you interacted with good or bad transparency solutions with my favorite things, spelling mistakes? And now I can stop sharing, and I think I was fast enough, so the discussion can go on.
That's excellent presentation, Merja. Thank you. And I would like to invite everyone now to join in. So what I will do is remove Merja from the main screen and go into gallery mode. So the question was that what are the good or bad examples of data transparency? I think it's really interesting to think about this kind of scale where we are kind of in the first steps, in the first baby steps of the understanding what are all the possibilities of how we can use this data. And maybe a good way to start is thinking about some kind of extremes, like what are super limited ways of understanding data, where as opposed to where we are mostly where we have experienced most connection to what kind of data is being gathered from us. Just to put this in other words of Merja's questions, does anybody have an opinion on that? Please turn on your cameras and join in.
I could give a brief example that I haven't seen myself, that I have heard that it exists in Netherlands, for example. In the trams and public transportation, it has some kind of visualization how the algorithms are making them move and stop and things like that. So what is behind that? And supposedly it works well. Unfortunately, I have not seen that, but that's an example of providing some information, what happens in the society that we are interacting all the time. And of course, when it goes further, it will be algorithms that are directly influencing us, our life, our decisions of the future and so forth, just like in the games. So maybe we can learn something from the games, how they do it, how they might do it. So maybe we can do the same for the society.
I think the question of data transparency is really difficult, and the tax example is actually really good because it's in a way, it's a rather complex system, but you are able to check the details you're in that current time and space interested in. But just showing off the for all data that's being collected for you in public transport or in a game, it wouldn't really say anything because we don't have the capabilities to understand it. And by visualizing it, we are essentially forming it and changing it. So it wouldn't be transparent in that sense, but it offers some information that you wouldn't be otherwise able to gain. Yeah, just as a comment, like what is the transparency in that sense?
Yes, and I can give an example from my own life. I regularly download my Google history, Google activity history. I don't know if you have tried this once. It's unbelievable to know what are all the things that you can see there. I don't think that this is everything that they are collecting, but just thinking about locations, people you have met, with whom you have been in contact, in which ways, how your calendar has worked, which pictures you have taken, where, who has commented, and then what you have liked, reminders how you have acted the past year, what you have, who you have been in video conference with, etc. This is just one service that is collecting these types of categories of data, and this is just what, and not to mention how. So I have the same kind of concerns as Merja, that when we think about the size of data that does define our actions, it's interesting to think also that what if we have access, what if all this data is transparent and how it is collected from us, how we can have the best benefit to turning it into information actually. Should we get it like raw data in some kind of a package that is delivered to our email so that at some point we can analyze it if we want to? Should we have it like a diagnostic telling us something more about us, or should we should those data packages be compatible so that we can combine them and understand more about ourselves? These are all kind of open questions to think about for me, at least.
The last reference that I posted there from 2020, they had actually done experiments of different kind of ways of presenting data, like the raw or the pure algorithms that are there and so forth. And of course, most of the time that makes no sense. And I can agree, I'm very far from making sense of that kind of stuff. And also your really nice example of Google activities or history, I also sometimes do it. And it's quite interesting to see how much your own memory is screwing up what you actually do. But it's not really nice form that you get it. It could be presented in somehow different way or interactive way. And the reference, I will actually pick, they were Fine Lich who wrote it. They came into the conclusion that the best way to do is to explain the points of decisions that are made behind for getting what is generally presented to you. So that sort of helped people to realize at least in some level what is happening behind the scenes. It doesn't mean that it's always the best, but I think it's a really good guideline how we need to somehow reduce what is happening to be meaningful for most. And I also like the idea of what has been come up here, especially with the gamers and now with Jana, that when we have this data, there appears this peer activity. Minna, I think it was Minna mentioned it with the small gamer groups that they start to create their own. So I see this also a possibility that if we could share some of that, we will see different kind of possibilities that people make for making sense. So sort of opening some of that. I have no clue how to do that, but I think that this kind of peer activity usually might work at least some level.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you said, and I just want to add one more dilemma, that when we reduce this information or when we kind of make it more presentable to the user so that it can be digested better, because as we acknowledge now, there's so much data that we don't know how to perceive. Is that maybe another point of ethical concern here? Who decides then how this would be presented? Because for let's say normal people or people who are not into that data science, maybe it's quite difficult to make choices. So the ones who are making those choices still have a very powerful position here to understand that what would be an ethical way of offering data summaries, without maybe over-interpreting or putting out a voice on them.
If I may, just like I had a chance to participate in the debate on the EU level, and yeah, the transparency is of course super important and all that, and I'm transparency NGO and all that, but I mean, it's what we've been mostly fighting is the access to the data for researchers, for independent researchers. Then I don't know, I mean, do researchers really have the capacity to digest that amounts of data? And now we are talking about the big tech, because I mean, somebody has to make them accountable. And I mean, to get the accountability is then the crucial thing in the democracies that we are doing now. And personally, I think perhaps to show the dynamics, how it works is the most important, because that can raise awareness on yeah, okay, this is a bit tricky system. I mean, and people understand what is happening. On the visualizations, then I have to say that one of the best ones I've seen is by it's a company, but it's called Brave, who has made these kind of visualizations that you enter a website, for example, a news site or whatever, and where does the data flow start to kind of target you. So it kind of sweeps around to the marketers and then they come back to you. And it's immense, like dynamics that you are bombarded then with a different very sophisticated advertisement algorithms that practically destroy your information ecosystem in the social media if you don't have your privacy settings at all in place, and you cannot do it. So it's more the dynamics, and that brings the awareness, and that should lead to some sort of an action, and it does actually at the EU level. I mean, I don't know, personally, I don't really know exactly what is Finland doing outside that promoting my data. That is, of course, wonderful. But on the EU level, there was a democracy action plan, media action plan just revealed last week, and they take this seriously because it's the core of the things. It's about the privacy and it's about values, and it's so to say, okay, patriotic, but the kind of the European approach to the data as such. And but the Brave visualization that how does the kind of how does the system work when you enter to something, and that was really revealing. And I think there has to be a decision of kind of different levels now than in a group that I was talking with the data. It's very problematic because all the media are, for example, involved. So you don't get the media house talking about against this type of thing. Everybody's collecting data. It's just the quantity of data of the big tech is completely different scale, and that has to be made visible, so to say, because that's the real problem. I'm not worried on an individual news site collecting some so that they can give me a little better ads or something like that, but accountability and then make the dynamics visible would be something that I would promote.
I agree with you. With the strategy, I know that Finland has made an AI strategy, and transparency in some sort is mentioned there. Estonia made it slightly after, a little bit less in in text, the Estonian one. A little bit less of discussion there also, but they do have a strategy. I'm not well aware enough to say how good or bad it is. I agree with you with the dynamism. That was one part in the article also, that they were looking which one should be sort of emphasized more, the dynamic or the decision parts. And the conclusion was that it depends a little bit on the case. Now by heart, I won't even start to try to figure out which way the case made a difference. But yes, they are both important, as you mentioned. Then there was a question in the chat. Is the brave.com that you were talking about? So many are interested about that. And then I think that I will leave to Jana, because I think you are about in the summary.
Yes, thanks, Merja, and thanks everyone. This has been super interesting. To be honest, it is more than I expected that we will get out of these discussions. Many new thoughts are born, at least for me. And just as a quick summary, what we discussed here, we looked at different kind of learnings we can get from gaming experiences, looking at data that is presented there to the players, and how these are experienced in terms of how rightful it is to have these statistics. What do they evoke? What are the relations from those online communities that or not the relations, the links that we can think of when we talk about learning in online communities in general. And then we discussed about legal issues, and we looked at some different kind of examples thanks to Yuri's presentation, and we looked at different services and maybe thought about some kind of small actions that we do every day in our lives, but maybe we are not aware and thinking about what is data policy about, or what should be legal, or what should we support as a future direction. And from there we moved into looking at Merja's really great and informative slides about ethics. And for me, it was at least new to realize that there are different kind of layers of understanding ethics. So it was good also to see those the theories there that you presented, Merja. I would like to get back at that at some point. And I'm really happy that we have had active speakers here in these discussions. So thank you, Mikko and Tatjana and everyone else for these thoughts. I will now also like to download the chat so we can look through all the links and get deeper into these topics. There are some questions as well in the discussion notes document. It's still open there if you want to go there and check. But if there isn't anything else, or no, maybe I just ask, is there somebody, does somebody want to add something or say something before we end this discussion today? Does anybody have some wishes? Well, everybody's smiling, looks happy.
And in the chat, Mikko suggests continuing the discussion in My Data Slack.
Ah, yes.
So,
yes, that's
I've personally been very lazy and or too busy actually to kind of engage too much. But there is yesterday in the data literacy group, they set this new channel for that type of thing. So at least I can, as we go on, so I can try to inform how we are doing, and if somebody wants to contribute, we are not too many, and it's a huge challenge. But that could be at least one channel to continue.
Yes, excellent idea. Let's do this. Let's go there and also look at what other talks are there today and tomorrow in the conference. So thank you, everybody. We are exactly on time. I'm so happy we did this very well. Thanks for everyone's contributions, and see you in the Slack Data Literacy channel. Bye-bye.
bye.